Hi, everyone. Good morning for some of you, good afternoon for others. My name is Amy Benner, and I lead the retail vertical here at Pinterest. I have a pretty deep background in the retail space, having worked at Walmart on the merchandising and marketing side, and having worked at other platforms like Yahoo and Adobe, working with retailers like yourselves. So excited to be able to talk about holiday. Every year, way earlier than we actually experience holiday as consumers. So to that, let's get started. Wanted to just start by showing a little bit about myself personally in context to how I use Pinterest. And so as I attempt, there we go, to go to the next slide, here's some examples of some boards that I've created. I have two kids. I like to read to them, and so I have a board of chapter books that are good for kids. So it's fun to get through one and be able to reference a collection of them and decide which ones are next. I've got some chairs because we were in the process of remodeling and needed some ideas on different kinds of chairs, different types of sneakers for different occasions, and then appropriate for this webinar, my son's wish list. He has I have a board of his things that he wants for Christmas this year. We did the same thing last year. So he's very into Pokemon, and so that is a big part of the board, but there's other things too. So that's me in a little bit of a nutshell, but wanted to get into the meat of the topic that is holiday of this year. As we all know, last year was all about mobile, how mobile played a role in shopping and how important it was for consumers to not only purchase via mobile, but research via mobile. And there was a lot of growth. We broke a lot of records. Black Friday became the first ever $1 billion mobile shopping day. And as we look towards this year, I think we're going to see obviously a continued trend, which is important to highlight because of the fact that over 80% of the activity on Pinterest is happening on a mobile device. So great opportunity for getting in front of consumers with messages about products you sell. And as we looked at some NRF data about why shoppers are, what's their main reason for buying earlier, or at least delays in buying earlier. And the number one reason that they share is that they're still trying to figure out what to buy. And so as we kind of think about the strengths of an early shopper, obviously they're out there trying to do some research. And so when someone is in the mode of evaluating a purchase, what I'm showing here is a chart that breaks down some data from McKinsey that helps you understand the mindset of a consumer. So this breaks down folks by category. There's 27 different categories, and it breaks it out by their purchases in each category. And the dark gray is how loyalty-driven purchases versus purchases made in the light gray, representing people that shopped around before they actually purchased. And so what we found in this study is that while in the past there was a lot of loyalty, and you see that in terms of the mobile carrier space, auto insurance, and investments, in the retail space, if you look all the way at the bottom, shoe, cosmetics, personal computers, the purchases that are made are a lot less loyalty driven than they've been in the past. So people are shopping around. And what that means for you as a brand or a retailer with products is that it's really important to be able to be there when they're shopping around. The other cut of this McKinsey data was to look at, of those folks who did shop around from the previous slide, if you broke them into buckets of their next purchase, how many of them purchased using the same brand that they had previously purchased from. And that was only 13% of them. Those were the loyalists. And then 87%, so the remaining, shopped around. Of those that shopped around and looked at different brands than the one that they were previously purchasing from, there was a group of vulnerable repurchasers, so they shopped around but they stuck with the initial brand. And then there was a group of switchers. This was the biggest group, 58%. And that group was tempted and switched to the brand that they researched. And what the interesting stat I want to call out here is, of the switchers, 69% of them, of brands purchased by the switchers, so the brand they switched to, were part of that initial consideration set at the very beginning of that shopping process for the consumer. What that means is it's important to be there at the early stage so that you can influence that consumer. And again, the McKinsey results demonstrated through something they call an initial consideration set index against the market share. They were able to correlate someone who's early on in the research process and how that presence by the brand in front of the consumer early on led to increased market share. So it's real. And the reason I wanted to share that is that on Pinterest, the way that consumers are shopping on Pinterest is a much earlier process than other places digitally from a shopping perspective. And so you see that people on Pinterest are often months, so 30 to 60 days ahead of other consumers are on Pinterest 30 to 60 days earlier than when they make the actual purchase. And that opportunity to get in front of someone at that influential early stage is important. And just to bring this part to life a little bit, for me, I have a cousin, her name's Jenny, and she's also my godchild. And so she moved into a house not too long ago, and I thought it was an awesome opportunity to give her a gift this holiday that's a little more special by knowing that she moved into this house. So I've been searching for gift ideas for her for Christmas the last like 3 weeks. And some of the ways I'd done that is on Pinterest looking for gift ideas. I know that she's got a really cool backyard and she's looking for ideas back there and she likes to entertain. So I've been like looking for backyard gifting ideas. If you can imagine on Pinterest, there's a lot of really inspirational things that help me get ideas for Jenny. Once I get to a point, which I'm not yet, of really knowing exactly what it is I want, I might be a little more deliberate, but right now I'm looking for ideas. And there's a lot of brands that can enter that space and influence me and give me the opportunity to know about them, which is what I'm looking for. And ultimately leading to the opportunity to actually buy it. So this first touch behavior really matters on Pinterest. And I think the industry at large has over-indexed on partners, marketing partners that drive the last click before the actual conversion. And we've really focused on perfecting marketing channels that drive that last click. But I think what we've neglected is the opportunity to influence someone further up, get in front of them with new ideas, new brands, new products to help influence what they actually later buy. And so we partnered with Newstar, and Newstar has a multi-touch attribution approach and software that allows brands to understand the impact along the entire path to purchase and not just that last click before converting. And what we found through a blind study across 3 retailers, larger retailers, we were able to learn that Pinterest had, out of all the marketing partners, the highest ratio of first touch conversions compared to last touch. So if you look at the chart on the right, you'll see that Pinterest paid advertising had the highest ratio of first to last touch rate of conversions. And what that helped us understand is that for those brands that were looking at just last click attribution, the credit that Pinterest drove, the actual value that Pinterest drove as a first touch partner, was 30% more than the last click attribution credited them for. So a big driver of this actually is the fact that when you're early on and influencing a consumer, that not only results in a purchase, but it results in folks considering bigger price points or more products or items in their basket. And so we saw that about 40% larger basket for those that were exposed to promoted pins versus those that weren't. This is what we call at Pinterest sort of the idea loop. So I, inspiration, D, discovery, E, evaluate, A, act. And it's really the consumer journey. And the pinner, the consumer, is at the heart of it. On Pinterest, we actually help consumers throughout this entire path to purchase through different interactions in the app or on the site. And so a lot of what is unique about how Pinterest actually works with consumers, or how consumers use Pinterest, is that a lot of the activity is fueled by this inspiration. Let me talk a little bit more about the power of inspiration. We did a study with a company called Deep Focus on the path to purchase, where we took consumers and we understood what platforms digitally were they using prior to making a purchase. And so it was a mix of qualitative and quantitative. So we talked to people as well as sent them surveys. And what we learned is that people need really a mix of both inspiration and information in order to make decisions on what they're going to buy. And on the red, you'll see that is attributes that over-indexed for inspiration. So things like ideas, completing a look, providing visual context, discovering new things, creating a personal relevance. The dark gray is attributes that over-indexed for rational decision making. So things like convenience, confidence, gathering information, or organization. And as you can see, there's different partners that play important roles at different parts of the process, but Pinterest plays a very strong role in providing that sort of inspiration. And here we ask people what influences their purchase decision. And we found that it's a mix, again, of inspiration and information. But the dark red is pinners' responses, and the gray is the non-pinner response. And in both cases, inspiration plays a big role, and information is important, but inspiration is outweighing. And we feel like the fact that there's shoppers who get inspired provides them with a higher level of interest and commitment to that idea or that possibility in their life they're trying to achieve, and that makes for a stronger commitment. And an informed shopper is very informed, as the word implies, but is also at a point where they're a little more rational, a little maybe less committed to the emotional element of it. And what that means from an outcome perspective is that consumers who are inspired are just better customers. They're more likely to spend more than they originally planned, purchase more products than they originally planned, shop across new categories that they weren't going in considering, or recommending to a friend. And as we think about the role that different digital platforms play in people's lives, the main role, or one of the main roles that people use Pinterest for, is to help them find and shop for products. And that's not necessarily the case with all digital platforms. Here are all the holiday moments we're all intimately familiar with, both from a business perspective and from a consumer perspective. And I think, as we look at how to work on Pinterest this holiday and what that strategy should be for being able to uniquely use the way consumers shop on Pinterest to drive your business, there are 5 points that I wanted to share in this webinar. The first, pull sales forward by seeding relevant ideas to mobile-first holiday planners. If you think about the behavior I just talked about in terms of consumers looking for ideas as gifting opportunities, seeding your products in front of them in what is more of an inspirational context is an opportunity to really grab attention early. So seed it early, inspire versus inform. And what that results in is the opportunity to earn a spot on the considerations list. And when you do that and you build that preference, you end up blocking competitors from doing that. And so being able to build that brand preference allows you to have a competitive advantage that you can then use to retarget those that got either engaged with your ad, your inspiring ad, or that got exposed to it, and retarget them as you move into the season, continue that relationship. So what does that look like? Let's look at phase one. This is kind of a recommendation that's broad, but can be applied across a number of different kinds of businesses. So phase one, reach people early with your branded content. On Pinterest, majority, 75% of the content is actually from businesses. It's not a user-generated content, UGC content platform. It's all about showing an authority by saying, I am a brand, and making that obvious on the creative. And making sure that that inspirational scene allows people to get an idea of what that possibility in their life could be through your product, through your brand. So you're there, you're inspiring, and you're targeting through a combination of keywords and interests. We've recently shared a lot of great information on products and the kinds of targeting opportunities available. And I would say, think broad at this stage. Broad interests, broad keywords. And then think about what the stage is an opportunity to build up an audience you will later retarget when it gets closer to the time where they're ready to make the purchase. Phase two is when you're moving a little further down the path to purchase. You want to have a little more inspiration, but you want to actually do it in a way that brings out the product a little bit more. So maybe a little less of a scene, a little more product oriented. Here are some examples of different kinds of retail pin creatives that were used during the holidays of last year. And you can see it's a combination of themes, like the first one looking at gifts for the soft soul. So collection of ideas that create sort of a look for someone who may be fitting that persona. Or maybe it's around a price point, collection of products that fit a certain trend or look at a price point that makes it easy to pull them all together and say under $20. So these are just a few of the examples. And then if we go to the next slide, this is the third and last phase, which is as you get closer to the consumer's point of purchase, this is where we're retargeting video engagers. So that's if phase one included video, you would retarget them. If it's not video, you still retarget them based on whether they engaged with the pin. That means saving it, clicking through. And here is when you have the chance to be a little more direct with a stronger call to action. And oftentimes retailers do that with a promotional text overlay. So up to 70% off. Here are a few other examples of promotional callouts that are a little more time sensitive. 12 days of deals is what Amazon ran. Black Friday big finds, JCPenney. 25% off everything, Walgreens. Macy's ran a Cyber Week campaign. So lots of specific, more urgent messaging that you can do as you get closer to the purchase. And I wanted to throw in just an example of a media plan, really just to show you the different things that you're going to be thinking about when you're putting your campaigns together. And the different options are just price points that are different depending on your level of investment. But the components are, what kind of targeting am I going to run? What kind of device am I going to use to target against? What are my flight dates for each phase? How do I want to bid? Do I want to bid CPC in the auction? Do I want to bid CPM? what's the estimated impressions that I might get from this? How might I, what kind of checkouts, if I look at a conversion rate of my typical campaign, how do I back into how much actual conversions might I get? What kind of measurement would I be using in reporting for that? And how do I want, what kind of format and creative do I want to use? So to wrap it up, in terms of the key takeaways, I would sort of anchor down on the last section in terms of the activation, and I would think in 5 steps. Number 1, pull sales forward this holiday by putting your products in more inspiring scenes and seeding these ideas, these gifting ideas, to very receptive, mobile-first planners. And do that in an inspiring way. And earn a spot on the consideration list by being early in this process and building brand preferences before consumers fall into the clutches of other retailers. And retarget consumers that engaged with your ad, whether that's video or static, later in the season to remind them about the product that they were inspired by initially.